Tingles with fly. Hello, thank you for joining me today. Today I will be showing you how to make some bread. So if you just watch, then we will dive right in. So what I love most about this bread recipe is just how easy it is to make. So you can see here, these are all the ingredients that we need to make it. So I just have regular white flour. It's not enriched or anything like that, just any typical normal white flour. Just have plain water. I got the hottest water that comes out of our tap. There's different things that can be said about the impact that hot water has on yeast, but one of my cousins did a science experiment trying to measure the differences, and it seemed like there was very minimal difference depending on whether you used really, really hot water or just kind of hot water. And so since then I always just use the hottest water I can instead of trying to temper it to some certain temperature. Just have regular iodized salt. You can use kosher salt or anything like that. Here I have instant yeast. I usually use active dry, but when I was buying yeast this time, this is the only kind that I could find. So I'll give you the measurement for active dry yeast, but if you're using instant yeast, you'll see I use a little bit less for that, but it's a bit imprecise, and that's fine. So I'm going to put those back. And here are the tools that I have. So I do make this quite a bit, so this is probably the only thing that you probably wouldn't have in your kitchen. And this is a Danish dough whisk. So this is quite a nice tool. You'll see when we mix it how it comes together quite nicely, but it's quite a funny looking tool. And then I just have half a tablespoon, a quarter cup, and a 1 cup. I actually meant to bring a half a cup as well, but anyway, doesn't matter. So I'll probably start. So we use, I'm going to move that out of the way. So with the water, you do use a cup and a half of water. This is actually a half batch, but that's the amount that I like to do right now. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's our cup and a half of water. So you can it doesn't actually matter what order you put them in. I was trying to do this in a smart order, and then I didn't, because now we're gonna have a wet piece to do flour, but we'll just have to make do. So this is 3¼ cups of flour. You can see now it's sticking there a little bit. Probably just pop this down here. Now we'll do 3 cups. So the actual book recommends filling it up and then tapping it and wiping it off with a knife. Because I have it in a big container like this, just kind of push it off to the side and then just make sure that it's all filled. There's 2. And 3. So as I said, this is a half batch of the normal batch. Just gonna try and get as much off as I can. So then we have our flour. So for the salt, you use 3/4 of a tablespoon. If you're at around sea level, I used to live in Utah, quite high, you would only want to use a half. So if you have a really high altitude, just decrease the amount of salt and the amount of yeast down to a half instead of 3/4. So this one I'll probably do a half on. So this is the one. If you're using active dry yeast, then you just do the exact same amount as the salt. But because we're doing instant yeast, it uses a bit less. Put the lid back on there. So this is a no-knead bread. Just gonna mix that. So you can see how it really just brings the dough together quite nicely. I just come So this dough whisk can also be used really nicely for something like pancakes or muffins, something where you really don't want the flours to be mixed together a lot, because it's very good at just kind of mixing without pushing everything together. Basically, we're just trying to mix until there's not really any big clumps of flour, so that most of the moisture and everything like that's mixed in. That's why when I put the water in at the bottom, it does seem to mix in a bit easier, But so it's nothing too fancy, and just kind of mix it like that. And now we'll just, so I will cover this in plastic, and then we just let it sit for, just eating these little extra bits off. So we let that sit for about 2 hours. It's supposed to be between 2 and 5 hours, but because it's getting to be summer here, probably about 2 hours should be about right. And I'll put the rest of the stuff away while that's sitting there. So after a couple hours, come back, and you can see there's gotten a little bit of condensation on the top of our plastic wrap. And inside you can see it's up a little bit higher, and there's a little bit of give if you kind of push into it. But it does a lot of the raising in the oven as well. So what we'll do here, so with this you can put this into a container and put it into the fridge. So however you want to bake it, you don't have to bake it straight away. After it's risen, you can just put this straight to the fridge, or you can bake some and not bake all of it. And it can stay in the fridge for up to 2 weeks. And as it sits in the fridge, it actually develops a bit more of a sourdough flavor. So something kind of fun with that. Okay. So for this, I'm just going to make little flatbreads and for that I do like to use a little bit of olive oil as well. You can actually use this dough for a variety of things. You can use it for pizza dough, you can make baguettes with it, you can make a big boule, like you could just use this whole thing and just shape it into one loaf. I like to do the flatbreads because they cook in like 10 to 15 minutes, so they're really quick. So if you are following along to bake, what you would want to do is I actually have my oven preheating. If I've turned it up to the highest temperature, and then I usually put this in on the top rack, and I'm just going to cook it on just the cookie sheet that we have here. So take our plastic off. We'll probably just actually leave it because I don't think we'll use all of it. And I always like to take my ring off so I don't get a ton of flour on there. So with this, easiest way is kind of sprinkle a little bit of flour on the top, and then just take a little bowl off. Just go like that. And then I do like to dip it in the flour, and then you can just kind of start shaping it. Just kind of curling the sides under, pushing it out like that. And it does get that little bit of kind of collects in the middle there, so I like to turn it over and flatten that out. So just kind of like that, and then we'll just set that onto our tray. I'll probably do about 6. Around, shaping. You can get more particular with the shape, or you can kind of take it easy. Really depends on what you prefer. Golly gee. more. It's got a little bit of a dry edge, so I try and work, if there's a bit of a dry, I do kind of work that into the middle so that it can be surrounded by the more moist dough. It is a moist dough, so feel free to add, just kind of dip it in the flour if it's getting too sticky to work with. So there we go there. Just pop that one onto our pan. Grab a piece off. And you might get little crusty bits in the middle. You can see kind of here how it kind of flaps off there. If you just kind of work it together, just kind of pinch it a bit, they'll tend to all just work in. They'll be fine. Now we can just pop that one on there. And we have enough space so we can do probably 2 more. So I'll just take a big piece and split that into 2. It smells quite good. I love the smell of bread dough, and then when it starts baking, it's even better. So, just pop that one on. We're starting to come together. And these I like to eat. These ones are actually pretty good on their own. But yeah, I like to have them just with some cheese, and then like a nice little side salad can be nice. So do like tomatoes and cucumbers in some vinegar. We all know how much I love vinegar. So there we go. So these I will kind of just move our dough out of the way. Probably try and get some of this off my fingers. That's the one thing, it does get a little bit of dough into your fingers, especially my little tapping fingernails. I always get tons of dough trapped underneath. Okay, so this I will pop in the fridge. Just like that. I have sometimes, if you have a plastic container, you can do it with that. You don't want it to be completely closed because it does have gas in there, so you want it to kind of be able to vent a little bit. So we'll move that off to the side. I'm not sure if I quite have enough oil in here, but I just kind of give them a bit of oil. It really makes them brown up quite nicely, so I do like a bit of oil on there. For the flatbreads, for the other breads, they have different ways of baking them, but with the flatbreads, I really like just a nice little bit of oil. go. Just have some nice ones that will pop into the oven now. Okay, so these have just come out of the oven. So you can see how they've turned out. Have a nice little bit of crunch to them. It's the bottom. So that is the pan. So I'm just going to put this to the side. And I was going to have this with some camembert. So my knife there. This is the camembert I have. Got it at Aldi. And it's quite good. So quite a nice sized wheel. So let's see. Not sure the best way to open this actually. So just a little bit up there. Could do it the long way, but it's a little bit of a pain. So that should be enough. I won't eat all of these. So there we go. It's closed up. Place that right there. And then here, just put a couple on there. And our little cheese slices at the back. So there we have our bread and cheese. So now that my food is all ready, then it's time to eat. It's turned out pretty good. No, this bread is really good. So, if you are interested in trying it, then follow the recipe, obviously, as through the video, or I will also put a link to the Artisan Bread N5, which is the place that created the recipe. I had like all 3 of their books. Anyway, so thank you for watching, and be sure to comment, like, and especially subscribe so that you can get more videos if